Starting ZBrush can be incredibly intimidating. So we're going to just cover the interface now. Just give you a brief overview. The interface is big and scary, but we're just going to demystify it for you. You're not going to use most of these menus here and items in interface. So we're just going to cover what's useful for you.
Like basically get you up to speed as fast as possible.
Yeah, essentially. So the first thing you're going to do, you're probably going to doodle around a little bit. You might click here and you might do some of this stuff here. This is essentially something Pixologic calls 2.5D. And we're not going to cover it. Because it's not very useful. It's pretty much a legacy feature of older versions of ZBrush.
Yeah, because ZBrush used to actually be used a lot for painting. Yeah. And this is what you do here. When you don't have a 3D object in your scene, you're painting on a canvas, but you're painting on a canvas with a 3D object.
Yeah. In short, it's weird, and we don't, and it scares us, and we don't care.
Yeah.
So the very first thing you're going to need to know is how to get rid of this. The way you get rid of this is by hitting Control N. Control N clears all this weird stuff.
Another thing we should probably mention is you've probably noticed that half of the canvas is filled with icons, which is, you don't want this lightbox feature up all the time. So you can get this away by pressing the comma key on your keyboard.
Yeah, this is essentially just a browser. It's a really nice browser. We just don't want it because it covers half our screen. So let's just go through the basics. The very first thing we're going to do, we're just going to get some 3D geometry. We go to Tool, and then we can dock this over. The way we dock it over is by clicking this circle with a thing on it.
I don't actually know what that is.
I don't know what it is. It's a thing.
Something.
And then we just drag it over here.
Like luckily the tool menu is already docked for you.
Exactly.
But this applies for all the other menus. You can dock all of them if you want to.
The tool menu is the one we're going to be spending most of our time with. Like you have all these menus here. We're going to stick with the tool menu for most of all ZBrushing. So the first thing we do, we get out a 3D object. You can just choose any one of these. If you click on this, the big icon here, you have 3 icons here. You have the big one, then you have 2 smaller ones.
The big one is always your active subtool.
Exactly, that's the active one. If you click on this one, you can choose any one. We're just going to choose the star. And again, if you drag it out, simply by hitting the left mouse button, or if you're using a tablet, just dragging it out, you're going to keep seeing it here. And you can kind of rotate it, but it's not in 3D. It's not a real 3D. So
it's fake 3D.
It's fake 3D. So what we need to do is we need to go to the edit mode. The edit mode can be accessed by hitting the T key as well. If you're not in edit mode, you can't do anything in ZBrush. This needs to be enabled at all times.
Otherwise you're stuck in this weird old painting mode.
Exactly. So as we said before, you hit Control N to clear the canvas. And now you're going to see one of them sticks. And
it's not just one of them. This is like it's your latest, latest star, exactly. The latest tool you dragged out.
Exactly. And the way we rotate here or navigate is to rotate, you hold down the right mouse button, and this just rotates it around. To pan, we hold down the Alt right mouse button, and to zoom, you hold down the Alt right mouse button, and then you release the Alt key.
This is really it's really tricky to get into the different kind of ways that navigation revolves around the Alt key all the time, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
It takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you're into it, it'll be fine.
You're going to see this a lot in ZBrush, that a lot of what we're saying is based on muscle memory. That's just the way ZBrush works.
Actually preparing for a lot of the introduction stuff here, because so much of this is ingrained in us. We've been working with this for, I don't know, like 5, 7, 8 years or so now, and you just do it. And all of a sudden you're like, oh man, how do I drag stuff out? How do I rotate?
Exactly. But this is going to become second nature very soon. We also have a document along with this series explaining all this. So if you can't remember exactly what we're saying, of course you can always rewind the video, but you can also just check the document.
Let's be honest, there's no way you're going to be remembering all of this.
No.
So this document at hand, it'll be very handy.
Exactly. So this is the navigation. Right mouse button, Alt right mouse button, and Alt right mouse button, and release Alt. It's going to become second nature in no time at all.
Yeah.
Hopefully. And then we have just some of these menus here. The first one we're going to cover is document. As you can see, they are alphabetical. Normally, interfaces are based on useful to not useful. This is based on A, B, C.
I guess that kind of makes sense.
I guess it kind of makes sense. And the first one we're going to cover is document. Document is everything we're seeing here. The first thing we're going to cover is the proportions, the size of the document here. If you set this to a low size here and hit resize, hit yes, you're going to see we get a tiny, tiny, tiny canvas. Hit the T key to enter edit mode again. Tiny canvas.
Love working on tiny canvases.
And we want something big. We want something matching our real estate, the screen real estate. So just drag it up to something which fits your screen. So this is going to resize the document again up to your screen resolution. You can also hit these buttons over here to scroll, zoom, and actual in half.
And these are different than the navigation. This actually affects the document window and not any 3D object.
This is like having like a magnifying glass on top of like a painting. It doesn't actually change. It's simply like a optical thing. So, but you can. It's useful occasionally. Scroll, zoom, and actual in half. Hit Control N. Every time you resize it, you have to clear your canvas and drag it up again.
And then T to go into edit mode.
T to go into edit mode. Then we have W size. This auto fits it.
So you just hit that and then you say new document and boom. Then it's automatically fitted to the screen resolution or like the screen space available in your ZBrush document. Which can be, because this way you won't have to guess.
Yeah.
If you manually input a resolution, this can be good if you want something specific, but generally just use the width size.
Then we're going to cover just some of these guys over here to the left. We have brush. The brush is where you choose your brush. We're going to cover this in depth or more in depth in the brush chapter. But we just want to show you that this is where you control the brush.
Because a lot of the brushes can be because there are so many brushes in ZBrush to begin with. You can download tons of brushes. It can be a bit like the ZBrush interface, overwhelming.
Yeah.
So, and it's in a later chapter where we'll go through like the basics and what you really need.
Exactly. Then we have strokes, alphas, textures, and matte caps. Matte caps are really nice. This is essentially just a different way of displaying your model. By default, it's going to give you the red wax material. Personally, I can't work with this.
No.
I think it's way too hard. You can see we have some custom matte caps here. By default, you're probably going to have these ones here. And some of these ones, such as matte cap gray. So the matte caps simply just displays your model in a different manner, which is really nice. When you're sculpting, you want to really play around with some of these, just so you can have a different view of your model.
Because matte caps can enhance certain parts of your model depending on which matte cap you use.
Then you can also change color of your model. And then up here we're going to cover all this later on. But essentially we have intensity of your sculpting, we have the size of your brush, and we have the total points, the total point count, which is really useful. You can see we have 14.
Well, 14 points on the star. And a quick note we should probably add on the matte caps is that matte caps are materials that have had initial color and light information baked into the material.
Yeah.
So it's not like your traditional 3D viewport where you set up some lights and then you probably have to render. It's sort of like it's a fake way to display shadows and lighting on your model, like real time.
And it can make your model look really cool.
Or really, really bad.
Or really, really bad.
Because there's some really bad materials out there.
We also need to cover some of these guys. For instance, perspective. Perspective is, you can't see it too much on this model here, but you really want to work with perspective on. If you're working with perspective off, you're going to have an orthographic camera, which is going to look really weird.
It can be useful for some things if you're matching things up, but generally you want to sculpt with it on. Otherwise, you can be sculpting on a face, and then all of a sudden you turn on perspective and you haven't worked with it for the last 20 hours, and then your model looks like a fish.
Yeah, exactly. You really want to work with perspective on. Hotkey is P. And then we have preferences. We just briefly want to cover that. This is where you change your preferences. This is something you're going to do a fair bit down the line. And one thing we would highly recommend you do right away is if you hit the right mouse button.
Oh boy.
This is awful. So you're sculpting and then you hit the right mouse button to change to navigate around. But accidentally you get up this menu here.
Let's say some people do prefer to work with the right clicking menu because you do have access. I think especially in the beginning, if you have a hard time remembering some of the hotkeys, the right-click menu gives you access to all of it immediately on your canvas. But as you progress further into your, let's call it ZBrush career, personally for us, it's easier to work with because you disable it. You don't have to like constantly worry about, this menu keeps popping up here and there.
So essentially what happens is you're rotating around, then you accidentally hit it, and then you change your brush size and your focal shift and everything here. And it just messes you up. You can access it by hitting the space bar as well. So it's a handy menu. You just don't want it on the right mouse button. So you can change this under preferences. You can just see here, we just docked it over by clicking this one. You don't actually have to drag it. You can just go here and just click this guy as well.
The sexy thing about ZBrush is you can also dock these things on the left if you wanted to. So like if you wanted to set it the other way around.
You can just click this guy here, open up, and then you can just dock it over. This is really nice.
But if you dock it on the left side, you have to drag it over because the right side is default.
And the way we disable this is under Interface or Preferences, Interface, Navigation, and right-click pop-up.
You don't want to disable right-click navigation.
No. you want to be clear. This is when you disable.
Yeah.
And that's it. The last thing we're going to cover in this one is if you hold down the Control key over pretty much any feature, you get a help menu, a very helpful help menu. You're going to have a lot of issues in ZBrush in general. You're going to wonder what is this feature, and I do this all the time. And Control click.
Control hover.
Yeah, Control hover over is going to give you some very nice and helpful documentation.